Obscenity.
Good evening. Welcome to the June 12th, 2018 Common Council meeting. And the first order of business is the roll call.
Bartlett.
Here.
Hirsch.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Reeves.
Here.
Majewski.
Here.
Caravello.
Here.
Jensen.
Here.
Wiesinger.
Here.
O'Connor.
Here.
Duranczyk.
Here.
Boersma is absent and excused. We have 10 alders present.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to welcome Dick Eady. He's here taking Attorney Dregny's place for this evening. If we have any questions for legal counsel, we can address them to Dick. And I'd also like to, as part of communications, recognize Jamin Friedel from Stoughton Utilities, who recently went through the Stoughton leadership training. So congratulations to Jamin. And does anyone else have any communications tonight? President Majewski.
I just have one, and the reason I'm talking about it is I had an email with a request to find out what happened on a subject. You know, we deal with a lot of things, and occasionally we hit a hot button issue, such as outdoor music was a couple weeks ago, or a month or so ago, and we tabled it. And in our world, in staff's world, we deal with a lot of things, and we move on from it, and pretty much let happen what happens, and we look at it at the minutes and we find out what happens. Out in the general public, they don't have that same luxury. And so I had a request to find out what was happening with the outdoor music, and just to let the general public know was that it did go back to public safety. Public safety decided to table and not move forward with any more changes to that ordinance. So that issue at this point in time is dead, and it will not be coming back in the foreseeable future. And that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Any other communications from alders? Seeing none, we do have a couple presentations tonight. The first one will be from the Redevelopment Authority, and I believe that Roger Springman is here and Gary Becker is here, and I believe that Gary is going to be doing the presentation.
All right. Hi. Good evening. So we're coming to coming to a conclusion for the TIF restructuring and for TID number 5 and TID number 8. I think it was back in December that the council passed a resolution authorizing the Redevelopment Authority to begin planning for the restructuring of the two TIF, or the restructuring of TID 5 and the creation of TID 8. We've got a public hearing scheduled for June 26th, just before the next council meeting. And so in anticipation of that public hearing, Roger thought it would be a good idea if we gave a presentation to the council, just kind of a brief overview. So we're going to try to keep this to 10 or 15 minutes and move forward.
Before you get started, for the public that's viewing on cable, would you explain the differences between the two TIDs or identify them?
Yes, it's in the presentation.
All right.
Right. Be the very next slide here. Yeah, the colors on the screen look a little bit different than they did on the paper, but anyway, the scope of this restructuring, as I said, includes TID number 5, which is the complete outline shown on the map, outlined in red. That's the existing TID number 5. It was set up as a rail corridor redevelopment TID. So it was an area that covered an area much larger than just the riverfront area. And at the time that this was set up, the focus was on the whole corridor, not just the southern part of it as it is now. The area that is proposed to be subtracted is in purple. So that's the essentially the riverfront redevelopment area of the TIP. And then, so what would happen after these changes are approved is that TID number 5 would look like that on the left, and TID number 8 would be the chunk that's missing out of that, which the boundaries of the new TID would be on the right. So there's no more additional land being added into a TIF district. It's just that the existing TIF district is being split in two, and, and a new TID is being created from what was subtracted. Some of the benefits of doing this is, first of all, TID number 5 is in a decrement situation, and this came about primarily because the biggest factor was the revaluation of the mill fab property, which decreased in value by about $1 million. It was revalued by the Department of Revenue and their assessors just before the year prior to them closing and shutting down. It'll also, this TID 5 amendment will also add 3 years. So the TIF law allows the City Council to add 3 years to the life of a TIF if they can demonstrate to the Joint Review Board that it's needed for financial reasons. And we've got pretty good documentation of that. The other thing is that TID number 5 was created in 2010. It's a 27-year TID. So there's about 18 years left in that life. And in order for the full scope of the riverfront redevelopment to be carried out, we will need more time than just those 18 years. We really need the full 27 years in order to recover the expenses for the scope of the redevelopment that's being discussed. So these are the reasons that we're proposing restructuring of this TIF district and the creation of TID number 8. And then you can see some of the basic numbers there for TID 5. Currently it's in a $1.8 million decrement. The projected incremental value after the subtraction is $891,000 to the positive. So once these properties are subtracted, TID 5 will be in a positive increment situation. But it's still not good because with that level of incremental value, it'll generate just a little under $20,000 a year. But there's a little over $1 million in debt against that TIF district. And so the annual debt service expenses are around $77,000 a year. So we will need about $4.5 million of additional development in TID number 5, even with the subtraction. So the subtraction's not a solution to cure all ills in TID number 5, but it does help. It puts it on a solid footing and sets the stage for hopefully attracting some new investment in the rest of the TID. Now to TID number 8, this table is a summary of the costs that are being proposed to be paid for out of the TID. The capital costs include the public improvements that are proposed in the area, the cost of acquiring property, demolition, remediation of environmental issues, those types of activities. I'm sorry, the capital cost does not include property assembly. That's the second line, but it does include all those other things. It also includes cash grants, which are incentives or payments made to developers to offset some of the extraordinary costs that they'll face for developing on contaminated property, contaminated blighted property. We've got professional services. Now these are costs that are for the 27-year life of the TID. We've got discretionary payments, so we're not sure what those are yet, but that's kind of a category that the City Council is authorized to make discretionary payments out of the TID. So we've got enough in here to designate $100,000 for that. Administration costs and the TIF organizational costs. There is some inflation because these costs will be spread out over a period of years, so we have an inflation expense. And then there are financing costs altogether for the borrowing. And near the end, I've got a little bit of a breakout of the estimated borrowing that the city would incur. It's just about $8 million out of the $21 million that's shown there as total TID expenditure. And this map shows some of the projects that are being proposed and where they would be located. Redevelopment assistance, demolition, and remediation would be throughout the district. The blue lines indicate where general streets and utility improvements would be made. The land write-down is a part of this. The Riverwalk trail improvements are in the project costs. And then there are costs associated with improving the riverbank, stabilizing and improving the river and the riverbank. And that includes some funding for the Whitewater Park in there. The increment projections are based on a concept plan that came out of the last summer's design charrette. And this is a representation of, and it's just a concept, it's not any kind of a plan that would be built or anything, but it's a concept for what could occur down there at the type of density that came out of the charrette. And so the areas that are striped are areas that the RDA does not control. And so the rest of that area between those striped ends is the RDA owned property. Now we're hoping that the Public Works site will be part of this, and also the Stoughton trailer site on the east side will be part of this broader redevelopment area, but the RDA actually only controls the core of this area and not the entire property. And these are the numbers that are built off of that concept plan. The numbers are a little bit hard to see, but the red circle in the bottom right-hand corner is $47.4 million in estimated value. Now, some of these buildings are, for example, the blacksmith shop, I think is number 9. That is showing 0 units, so that'll be, if that stays and is part of this development, it would probably be some type of commercial use or other non-residential use, most likely. So the numbers on that were changed a little bit recently. And what else? Oh, there's a mixed-use building that's proposed where the Public Works garage is on that site. And along with the power plant that's also on that site, there would be a little bit of retail along with residential in that area. So this is what the projections for the TIF district are built upon. Summary of land uses. So building footprints themselves take up about 20% of the site or the area. Surface parking about 15%. There's quite a bit of underground parking in there as well. But I'm just concerned about how the land is being consumed in this table. The street right-of-way is about 13%. The riverfront path takes up about 10%. The promenade, 6%, and the rest is open space between. The open space between buildings and features and all that is a little over a third of the site. So for a total of 15.7 acres in that whole outlined area on the previous map. Now, as far as the timing of when this increment will come in, we're expecting that once a developer is on board, that they would be putting up a couple of these buildings over a period of years in the front end of the TID, but then as the market for new residential units starts being absorbed, that pace will slow down a little bit, and so we're projecting about every other year of new development occurring until the site's built out. So it could actually happen faster or slower than this, depending on the market and the developer and the timing of and what they're proposing. But we're taking the best shot that we can at making these projections. And then this is the cash flow. The main thing to look at here is that cash flow is pretty tight. It's pretty much in the red, although on an annual basis, for most of the time it balances, with some years being in a deficit. But by the end of the life of the TID, this should be in a positive balance. The other thing to point out here is that I made some fairly simplistic assumptions about financing. When the city's financial advisors start actually structuring the financing, they're going to be able to structure it to be better than what we're assuming here. So we're kind of assuming a fairly basic, simple financing. And it's not going to be that at all. There'll probably be multiple financing and layered in different ways, and that'll help offset some of this negative cash flow. And this is a graph of what this looks like. So the red line are the expenditures, the blue line is the revenues, and then you can see where they cross about a little bit past the halfway point in the life of the TID. And then we put together a few frequently asked questions about this restructuring. Why is the RDA holding 2 public hearings? I forgot to mention that at the front end. We do have 2 public hearings, not a single public hearing on the 26th. But we're required to have a separate public hearing for the actions associated with each of the TIF districts. So TID number 5 needs to have its own public hearing, and TID number 8 needs its own public hearing. How will TID 5 pay for itself and its expenses if TID 8 is created? TID 5 is currently unable to pay its existing debt of $1 million+. The expected increment plan for the riverfront redevelopment area would need to occur in the next 6 years for TID number 5 to come close to paying off by the time it expires. And so even with a 3-year extension, TID 5 will still need an additional $4.5 million in increment over the next 8 to 10 years, even after the restructuring. What is the relationship between TID 8 and the proposed riverfront project? TID 8 will be the financing tool to pay the public improvements necessary to make the site ready to develop and the extraordinary private costs of developing on contaminated, blighted land with high groundwater and poor soils. The taxes paid on the higher post-development property values is a source of revenue to cover the public expenses of making the site productive again. And the final one, how much public money will have to be invested in TID 8 over the next couple of years? Approximately $15 million in capital investment will be required. With this comes an additional $5.8 million in financing costs and about $4 million in TID administrative costs. The city is expected to finance approximately $8.5 million of this. Nearly $1 million will be paid out of cash flow over the life of the TIF, and the developer will finance the rest through a pay-as-you-go development agreement. So that's the long and the short of it. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Gary. Is there any questions tonight? Otherwise, mark your calendars for the public hearings that'll be occurring on the 26th. I believe we moved the Finance Committee meeting up to 5 o'clock in order to accommodate that, so it's going to be a busy night. Sure.
Just to clarify, Gary, just to clarify, if, say,
Can you
TID 5
talk into the mic, please?
Sorry, my mic was turned a different direction. Say TID 5 is still as, that development doesn't ever come, but there's another TID that is in surplus. Can some of that surplus money from another TID pay some of TID 5?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
The city has done that before, and that's certainly an option. There are other options as well. As we get further down the life of the TID and things aren't happening, there are other actions we can take. We can declare it a distressed TID, for example, and that would give us another 10 years of life beyond the 3 additional that we've got. So, and then sharing revenue between 2 TIDs is a relatively easy thing to do as well.
Thank you, because I think that is a little bit more palatable
Yeah,
and less scary for
yes.
us trying to,
There are options.
yes, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you. And then we have another presentation. Rob and Samantha White are here for the Stoughton Fair Board presentation, and we'll get them queued up here. You might have noticed in your packet there was a copy of the PowerPoint and some additional flyers, and it looks like some are being passed around as well. And as soon as they're ready, you can go. The microphone, you might need to adjust it a little bit. We want people at home to be able to hear you.
Sure. First off, I'd like to thank you all for letting us come in, tell you a little bit about the Stoughton Fair. The city and fair have kind of worked together for about 92 years, and sometimes we just need to talk again. And so I can introduce myself. You can all get to know who I am. I'm Rob White. I'm past Fair Board president. I've been on the Fair Board for 21 years. I've lived in Stoughton all my life. Graduated from Stoughton High School, former 4-H project leader, and everything else. So kind of know my way around Stoughton, don't we, Bob?
You do.
Hi everyone, my name is Samantha White. I am here because I'm a third-generation fair exhibitor. If my dad's been on the fair board for 21 years, I've been alive for 20, so the fair is really all I know. I'm currently involved with the fair. I am the sheep and meat animal sales superintendent, and we'll get into in a little bit what a superintendent does. I am headed into my third year at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville, where I'm majoring in agricultural education. I hope to someday teach high school agriculture in the area. I am a past Stoughton FFA president, so I was very involved in that in high school. I got the honor to receive my American FFA degree, which is the highest honor any FFA member can receive. I've been very involved with raising livestock throughout my life, particularly sheep. I was the Supreme Sheep Exhibitor at the Wisconsin State Fair last year, and most importantly, I was the SHS class of 2016.
All right. First off, we thought we should let everybody know the difference between a fair and a festival. All right, because they are not the same. Festival is what happened a couple weeks ago, Setting of Mai, where you are celebrating heritage, can be a religious organization, something like that. A fair is typically agricultural based, not always, but it's usually has to do with products that are for trade. So when you hear about the hot dog was introduced at the 1912 World's Fair, well, they didn't have cows there, but they brought products from all over the world and introduced them to everybody else. So that's kind of the difference between a fair and a festival. And the Stoughton Fair is a fair.
So some early fair history. The original Stoughton Fair Association was founded in 1879. They held their first fair at East Side Park in the summer of 1880, and it was really successful right away. They built a grandstand, they had a racetrack at East Side Park, but the success was brief, and it only lasted a few years until we got to the fair we know today.
So now we have the present day fair. Does anybody remember that grandstand? That stood for a real long time, and I believe it was about 10 or 12 years ago, it finally could no longer pass building code. It was a wooden structure. So the fair and the city partnered and put in the grandstand that is currently at Mant Park. For people who don't know the history, that's co-owned. The city financed half of it and the fair financed half of it. So a true joint venture. We've been running since 1925 under our current structure. So that's 93 years, and it's always been at Mant Park.
So the Stoughton Fair Association is comprised of 20 board members, all of which are volunteers. They meet about once a month, August through March, and then getting closer to the fair, they'll meet at least twice a month. Beyond the board members are 84 superintendents. Superintendents are also volunteers that help run the fair. And a superintendent is in charge of each department, and they help gather judges and possible sponsorships for the show, and just making sure that the show or exhibit runs smoothly. And they're also there to answer any questions that potential exhibitors might have.
So the Stoughton Fair at a glance. We have 28 youth departments. Departments are anything from dairy, beef, to woodworking, crocheting, baking, photography. There is a lot for kids to do at the fair. You don't have to be a farm kid. As you all probably realize, there's not many family farms left. So most of even the livestock exhibitors are people who live on a 5-acre farmette and they just raise animals. We have kids from town who can raise rabbits, because you can do that in your garage. With chickens, we even had somebody who has chickens in their backyard here in town, and they brought them down to the fair. So We also have 5 senior divisions, and that's for our senior citizens. They range from quilting, pie baking, and then we actually have a pie auction after the show. There's some amazing pies. So, and half the money from selling the pies goes to the baker, the other half comes to the fair, so it's a fundraiser. We have exhibitors from 7 counties. Because we're not government affiliated, we're what's known as an open fair. So we have 7 counties represented here at the Stoughton Fair. It's a 5-day event with entertainment pretty much every day and a lot of good food. We're a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. Like I said, we receive no public funding. It's free to enter the fairgrounds, and there's no beer tent or alcohol served. We are the only fair in the state of Wisconsin that is both free and non-alcoholic. So you may ask how we do it. It's called volunteers.
So I want to talk a little bit about the youth impact that the fair has. In order to enroll in the fair, you have to be enrolled in FFA, 4-H, Boy Scouts, or Girl Scouts. Any of those you can exhibit at the fair. Some notable 4-H and FFA alumni, just a shameless plug for those organizations, are some past U.S. presidents, congressmen, Nobel Prize winners. Lots of very influential people in our history have been involved in those organizations. The Stoughton Fair has created lifelong friendships among its exhibitors. You can start showing and exhibiting at the fair when you're 9 years old, and I don't know any 9-year-olds that can drive, so the only place you get to go and see those fair friends you make is when your parents take you to the fair, and you get to show off to all of your friends who don't participate in the fair what you've been doing. Exhibitors learn valuable skills while they're at the fair. It takes a lot of time to create your projects, to raise your animals. It takes a lot of discipline, and it also teaches you networking skills. People come to the fair and they'll ask you questions about your project, and at a super young age, you're able to explain to them what you do. I have some pictures on the screen. In the bottom left-hand corner is our Little Britches swine showmanship class. Little Britches is for kids who are under the age of 9. If they have an older sibling or a cousin or just a family friend who exhibits, they can come in after the show, go in the ring with them, and get to show a pig, get a blue ribbon, and some free ice cream. And you can see how intently they're listening to the judge, and he's telling them, you know, this is what you did really good, this is what you can do better. And at an age younger than 9, it already gets them so excited to be involved in 4-H and FFA and come to our fair. The upper right-hand corner is a picture from the 4-H Olympics. The 4-H Olympics are different yard game style events where 4-H's compete against each other, and it's a really great way to network with other 4-H's in the area. Having 7 different counties, there's a lot of 4-H's in those counties. We have 3 that service Stoughton alone, so it's a really great way to meet more people from other counties. And the bottom right-hand picture is some kids showing their rabbits, and rabbits are one of those things that you don't have to live on a farm to exhibit. Some other ways that the fair impacts youth: the only paid employees of the fair are local youth. We have about 25 kids on the grounds crew. They would set up tables and chairs for events or take out trash bags, overall just making the fairgrounds a nicer, cleaner place to be. We also have about 25 kitchen staff. They would prepare the food in the fair's kitchen, sometimes serve it if we don't have a civic group in serving food, things like that.
Community impact. This first number, you're going to say, how do we know there's 60,000 people go through there? Well, that's a very good question. We don't have a gate, so we don't know how many people come through. That number is based on the carnival that comes. They have a formula that they figure that if they sell this many rides, then there must be this many people there. They tell us it's that number. I don't know if that number is accurate, but there's a lot of people go to the Stoughton Fair. It's a family event. You can go down there and not spend a dime. You can take your kids, show them the animals, walk around, people watch. If you're like me, you might make it through the food court a time or two. This community impact, we had put something on our Facebook page that says, give us your favorite memories of the Stoughton Fair. Cassie here put on that they were they're from the Chicagoland area, they were visiting Wisconsin, decided to go to the Stoughton Fair. They now live in Stoughton. And they say one of the major reasons was the Stoughton Fair. They saw how a community comes together, they saw the kids having fun, and now they're residents. So, this person here, she just mentioned that when she was a child, she showed for 11 years. And now her kids show. So, it is just a great event.
Sure. So one of the newer things we have at the fair, we are doing our 5th annual meat animal sale. I think you all have had a brochure and a flyer on that. It is a sale of beef cattle, sheep, swine, boar goats, turkeys, chickens, and rabbits. It's a live auction, and it really emphasizes the importance of farm to table. The kids bring their animals to the fair. You can walk around the fair and see their animals, and then we auction them off live on Saturday afternoon in the arena. And for the large animals, the beef, sheep, swine, and goats, it's a price per pound. So the auctioneer's up there and you bring the animals through, and if you go and sit and watch the meat animal sale, you just see the smiles on the exhibitors' faces, and they're very proud to have their animal up there in front of you. And it's a great way for them to network their project and make a little bit of money on it. It is proven that you'd save about 30% if you bought all of that meat at a grocery store. You'd save 30% if you bought all of the meat at our sale versus a grocery store, because you're buying it all at once. You get to choose how you want it processed. You get to know where it's processed.
We also, at the sale, auction small animals. This is a little girl from here in Stoughton. She sold her pair of chickens last year. Just so you get kind of a feel. I'm sure you've all been to the grocery store and bought chicken. I believe she got $200 for those chickens. So, little above market price. What that is that's called community support. Businesses and people in the community come forward. They know that, yeah, I'm going to get good chicken. It's not $200 good chicken. But when that little girl smiles at you, it's worth $200.
This year will be the 4th year where the Meat Animal Sale Committee is able to sponsor a scholarship that is given to a youth in the Stoughton area who has shown livestock all of their years at the Stoughton Fair. And it's just another way that we are trying to give back to the kids that show at our fair, that are continuing their education in some way.
I'm sure the people back there know who the guy is. That's a pretty good view of the back of my head.
The Went Agricultural Education Center. So this is an interactive educational exhibit focusing all on agriculture. Everyone benefits from agriculture in some way, but they may not know it. Agriculture is a huge industry that spans many lengths. In this building, we talk about Wisconsin agriculture, natural resources, livestock, crops, landscaping, as well as the various ways you can continue your education, whether that be at a four-year university or a technical college in Wisconsin in the field of agriculture. We also have live demos. The Wisconsin DNR has came in and set up some demos for us. We do farm safety demos throughout the week, as well as the Wisconsin Farm Bureau comes in and talks about the agriculture industry. Beyond that, we do have live animals that people can interact with, some really cute baby chicks, baby ducks, things like that.
So when I mentioned that we pay for this because we have all volunteers, we've yet to find an insurance company that'll volunteer to pay our premiums. So we do have a lot of expenses. So we have grandstand entertainment. This is what the schedule is for this year. We have a couple truck and tractor pulls. We have safety night that Chief Leck and his department and the fire department and EMS will come down and do some demos. This year we have Med Flight is going to land at about 7:15. One thing that you don't see on there that I want to invite you all to, on the 4th of July, I realize it's a holiday, but that's the way the fair landed, at 4 o'clock we have an opening ceremony where kids come up and they do what they do at their 4-H meetings. They have a pledge, it's called the 4-H pledge. And they'll come and do that. We raise the flag, they do the Pledge of Allegiance. Then this year we have a kind of a surprise dedication, I guess, to somebody. Somebody had made a donation, so we're honoring them. So I invite you all to come. This is something we used to do 20 years ago, and everybody's schedules got busy, but I'd like to offer that opportunity. You come down, we'll have the kids take you down and show you the barns and show you what they do. So please, on the 4th of July at 4 o'clock, come on down.
So some daily entertainment at the fair that happens every day. We have live music at the Moyers Music Pavilion, right in the center of the food court, so you can listen to some awesome music, eat some great food. It's just an overall good time. The Went Agricultural Education Center does open daily from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., as well as the carnival, food court, and project judging every day.
In the food court, we have, of course, good fried stuff on a stick, like everybody thinks of the fair. But we also have some local vendors, and the fair itself also does some dinners. Like Friday night, we're in Wisconsin, so we have to have a fish fry. So you come on down and you support the fair, reasonably priced. Of course, we have the FFA alumni with their famous cheese curds and cream puffs. The Farm Kitchen is a local retired dairy farmer who's turned to concessionaire. He does baked potatoes. The Dane County pork producers come in. They have really good, I call it a pork on a stick. It's a pork chop with a bone, but it's really good. So
I want to thank you guys again for letting us come in and speak with you and just get to know each other. And I want to invite you one more time to the 2018 Stoughton Fair, July 4th through the 8th.
anybody have any questions for us? We must have done all right.
No, I just want to thank you guys for all of your efforts in putting this on. It is a great thing for their community, and I applaud all your efforts and all the volunteers that you gather to put this great fair on every year. Thank you very much.
It's our pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda would be the public comment, and we have one person signed up for that, and I'm not going to risk mispronouncing your last name, so you can come up, Gary, and give us your full name and your address for the record, please.
Pass these around. Hi, I'm Gary Gimmestad. It's a good Norwegian name. And, my address is 2175 Colliday Point Drive.
A little bit more in the microphone if you can.
More in the mic?
Yeah,
Okay.
perfect.
All right, and I am here representing First Lutheran Church, which is right up the road from here, of course. And we have a program called Love Stoughton Area, and a brochure on this is making its way around. And what we do in a nutshell is we put together teams of volunteers who can go out and take on a project and do great things. I want to give a couple examples. First, the Legion Hall on Page Street has a tremendous amount of board fencing, more than you might think. And last fall, that fencing needed to be restained. We put volunteers on that and put in 75 man hours and bought hundreds of dollars worth of supplies, and we got it done. Another example, food pantry. We did a deep cleaning. We took everything out of the food pantry, all the shelves, freezers, furniture, everything. Stripped the floor, sealed it, waxed it, put everything back. Again, tremendous amount of manual labor on that one, but we got it done. Now, this is free and it's available. What Stoughton area means is Stoughton area school district. So that's hard and fast. The project has to be in the school district. There's one other consideration. A project should be something that would not happen without us. I mean, if it's something that could be done by a local handyman and there's money to do it that way. We don't want to take away work from anyone. That wouldn't make any sense. But this is available. If you know of some need in your district, just alert people. There's a real simple application inside this form, or just tell them to contact the church office. We have a dedicated administrative person in the office. And it doesn't, it's so simple, just apply. You never know. So far, we've only helped individuals and nonprofits, but everybody is eligible. There's no harm in applying for it. And I just wanted to get the word out. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
And did anybody else want to speak at public comment tonight? Pardon me?
Don't I talk now?
Yeah, come on up, Jim. If you want to just state your name and your address for
Yeah.
the record, and then we give you
My
3
name is
minutes.
Jim Hallback, and I'm at 3337 South Schuman Road, Orfordville, Wisconsin. I'm more known as Reverend Jim. I have Reverend Jim's downtown. We've been shut down for a little while because, well, the economy and everything else, and the building looked like crap, to be honest with you. We're in there now doing some changing around. I've had a couple people come down and take a look. We're putting in a new floor. We got a letter saying that we have to open up by June 17th, or we're in violation of getting our liquor license back. I just found out that the Liquor Advisory Board has questioned whether they want to give me one for next year or not. Well, I'm putting a lot of money into this place, so I really need to know I'm going to get one. You're welcome to come down there anytime you want to take a look. We put a new floor in, we've got new bar stools coming. We'll be open for business on Saturday at noon. So if you just take that all into consideration, we plan on, that building is probably the worst building I have in my portfolio. We're working on it. We're working on the inside right now. It's got a lot of good things to it. The back bar is from the World Fair in 1933 from Chicago. Somebody from Stoughton bought it and brought it back to out of Chicago and brought it back. We're trying to get that refurbished. The ceiling has got, we don't know if it's tin or copper yet. I'm hoping it's copper, of course. But we have somebody coming in that's going to dry ice the ceiling to take it back to its original, I don't know what you want, decor, you know? So I guess also I'm asking you is to give me back let us have our liquor license and take my word that we'll be open Saturday at noon. Pretty much it.
Yep. Okay,
Got any questions, let me know.
thank you. And anybody else want to speak at public comment tonight? Seeing none, the minutes and reports are in the packet, and that would take us to the consent agenda. So I'll be looking for a motion.
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Jensen to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second by Alderperson Duranzik. Anybody like to have anything removed or discussed on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. That takes us to old business, which is, first item is R78 of 2018, and that comes from the CACP committee, and that would be Alderperson Wiesinger.
Okay, R 78, 2018, resolution authorizing and directing the proper city officials to adopt a policy related to the use of personal computing devices for elected officials. It was approved by CACP 4-0 on May 1st, 2018. And I so move.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second by Alderperson Hirsch. And then we'll send it back to Alderperson Wiesinger. You have any additional comments, or you can hand it off to IT Director Montgomery?
John, do you have anything to add at all?
No, with the help of a couple of the alderpersons, thank you, Denise. It was rewritten, so it basically took into everyone's considerations, and I hope it's met with everyone's approval.
Alderperson Duranzik?
Yeah, reading this,
it seems like C is actually contained in A. So I'm not really sure what the difference would be.
There really isn't much of a difference in here. A is more of a detail and C is more of the summary. I mean, we can certainly turn around and strike it if need be.
Yeah, because it seems like C is redundant. But I also have, I have another question for you. The public has access to the website and also sends emails to the city staff, and of course they respond. And so I guess I'm wondering, how is this really different from the alders using their own devices then? You know, because there seems to be some concern about infecting our network, and yet we have the public interacting with us on a regular basis. So, you know, can you kind of explain how this is?
All of the city employees are behind a firewall. So when we do a lot of education with the leadership.
Can you move that so that you can, yeah, thank you.
All of the city employees as well as leadership team are reminded and they go through a number of advisements as far as the threats that are out there. So we always make sure that we are very aware of everything that we can do to protect our own network. And that includes emails from the public. Alderpersons and any other elected individual should also have that same awareness that's going on. So I think maybe to address your issue, I send out warning emails, I should say, to all city network employers. I can certainly include the city council on that as well.
Oh, do you send them to the city council
No,
people?
not at this time.
Okay, maybe that would be a good idea then too. And also, if you can make recommendations for virus and anti-malware. I think in the last policy, you actually listed a couple of different types of virus and anti-malware.
Correct.
Like
McAfee.
And if you have
Symantec.
McAfee, that is sufficient
Yes.
then? It is,
Yeah.
okay, well, all right.
We changed the wording of that just so it was approved, whether, you know, I didn't want to limit it to this or that. It just has to be approved.
Okay, thank you.
Alderperson Hirsch and then Bartlett.
And John, I know we went over this at CACP, just for clarification, people that have notebooks, because it's only like a reader, the virus, McAfee is not needed and all that, right?
It's less likely that you will ever get one on a virus like that. We certainly can put that on there, but we do take every step to make sure that the operating system's threat protection is turned on to the notepads before we give them to you.
Thank
So
you.
there is already some security built into it.
Any, Alderperson Bartlett.
I guess, yeah, you're the IT expert, so I'll definitely trust you when it comes to whether we have adequate protection or not. I don't know completely, because some of the devices, some of the Apple devices don't even allow really some of the antivirus software out there. They lock up their systems, so I guess take that into consideration so we're not forced into buying something expensive that doesn't do us much good.
Correct.
So I'll trust you to be the expert on that. I guess one question about the wording I had is that you put, if we choose to use our own personal device, you put in item D that it's our responsibility to ensure all devices are updated and patches are kept up to date. So if we use a city device, whose responsibility is that? I think that responsibility should be for everyone, whether they're using a city device or their own device.
Correct.
Just-
With the notepads, they do an automatic update all the time as far as the operating system goes, and you always get the updates there. These updates that I was trying to address here is more for the laptops. Anybody on a Windows operating system, to make sure that your Windows updates are always in place if you've got antivirus on it, which you should, to make sure that those live updates are kept up to date.
And I agree with that. I was just questioning the wording that seems to me that the responsibility, if you use your own device, it's your responsibility as a council member. It's our responsibility. But if we use a city device, it doesn't say that's our responsibility. That makes sense?
It does.
Otherwise, yeah. Otherwise, I agree with the wording of it.
Okay, so are you looking to make changes, or what are we looking to do with it? While you're thinking, Alderperson O'Connor, did you have a thought?
Just for a clarification, so for the city-owned laptops, do you guys push it from your network? The security patches and that stuff? To keep them?
None of the alders or elected officials have laptops that are city.
I'm sorry, I said laptops. I meant the,
Oh, the notebooks?
tablets.
No, we do not push anything to the notepads.
I guess I would make a motion to change if I could.
So you want to do an amendment?
Yes.
Okay, and exactly what would you like to amend then?
I would just like to pull that first sentence out of section D and move that above the personal device section so that it covers all devices, not just personal devices.
Okay, is there a second on that amendment?
Second.
And a second by Alderperson Johnson. You're okay with that? It suits the purpose. Anything else on the amendment? Alderperson Hirsch?
I guess I need a clarification. For all the alders that have a notebook, we do not have to buy virus protection based on what you said.
Correct.
So that's, I guess, I'm just trying to make it clear that elders who use the city-given notebooks are not responsible to buy malware or anything else because these devices can't be infected based on, unlike the laptops. Or there's a small likelihood.
There's a small likelihood. I mean, I just would like to give you one thing. With McAfee licenses, you do have the ability to protect 5 different devices. So if you've got other computers at home or even your smartphone, you can use that single license to cover all of your devices. And you are certainly more than welcome to put it on your notepad.
Okay, any other questions on the amendment? Hearing none, all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, so that carries. So we go back to the original motion as amended. Any more discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that takes us to ordinance 15 of 2018. And it's a second reading coming from the Planning Commission, and that would be Alderperson Bartlett.
And this is bringing from the Planning Commission Ordinance 15 of 2018. This is the ordinance amending the zoning classification for a parcel of land located along the Yahara River behind the Stoughton Hospital, 900 Ridge Street, Stoughton, Wisconsin. Move for approval.
Second. There's a motion by Bartlett and a second by Jensen. Alderperson Bartlett.
And this is a parcel of land behind the hospital that we've been working on for a while to get for a bike trail in the future. So we've finally worked it out with the hospital. So I don't know if Rodney or anyone else wants to add, but or if that's enough.
It's our parcel of land. It's proposed to be zoned institutional to accommodate the trail.
Thanks.
Okay.
Alderperson Durancic.
Yeah, I have a question. In the packet, there is a picture of the path, it looks like. Yes, that one. What is the red arrow pointing to? And
It's pointing to the parcel of land to be rezoned.
that's the parcel of land that needs to be rezoned. Okay.
Little triangle.
And then what about this project? Now what is that?
This is a project plan set to show where the trail system was planned to be constructed. The arrow just denotes the location of the rezoning request for this very small triangle right here.
Okay.
So
All
that
right.
triangle is depicted more precisely as shown here.
There. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. That takes us to new business, and we're at R111 of 2018. And this one comes from CACP and Alderperson Weisinger.
R 111, 2018, resolution directing the proper city officials to adopt a policy relating to interview guidelines for alderpersons. CACP approved 4-0 on March 19th, 2018, and I so move.
Second.
I have a second by Alderperson Hirsch. Go ahead, Alderperson Weisinger, did you want to walk us through this or need some help with it, or?
Well, Lisa might have more to add because I wasn't on CACP at this time in March, but you can see the policy outlined in the packet. Are there, I don't know.
Did you have something that you want to add, Alderperson Reeves?
Well, I think what we just talked about was maybe some guidelines so that we're clear to candidates in terms of what the expectations are regarding word limit, and there also was some concern about, surprising a candidate, so to speak, with a question, and so we thought it might be good just to lay out some potential guidelines about any questions that were going to be asked outside of what was in the packet or the application would be cleared in advance. So that's sort of where that came from.
Sure. And I think part of it, if I remember, is we wanted to put a word max on it to try to condense the answers as they're filling out the application. Mm-hmm. And I know for tonight's questions, a couple that we just wanted to clarify is to make sure that during the interview process that the applicants understand that their committee appointments would be as follows. And if they have an issue with that, they can let us know during the interview. Whoever is selected tonight would be on the CACP, which is the Community Affairs Council policy. And they typically meet on the first Tuesday of the month. So we want to make sure that the applicants don't have a conflict with that. And then the other one that they would serve on would be public safety, and they typically meet on the fourth Wednesday of the month. So we wanted to at least put that out there. I think that came from Alderperson Durancic, wanted to make sure, and that the expectation is as a new council person, that you review the packets before the meetings, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to either myself or the staff member or the committee chair and try to get some clarification to any questions you might have leading into a meeting. I think you'll find that staff is very, very helpful, especially when you're first appointed to a position on the council. There's a lot of information, and it's good to reach out before the meeting and ask the questions. Having said that, is there any questions about the motion on the table? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries. Thank you very much. And that takes us to the item number 8, which is the interview for the Aldermanic District number 1 appointment. And I think that maybe the clerk kind of wants to lead this one.
Sure. So we will be going through and asking the questions that were part of the application. As part of the new policy that you just approved, the candidates will be rotating in order, so one candidate doesn't have to answer every question first. And we picked out of a hat to see who would start us off today, and the first candidate is Brett Schumacher.
So you can come up to the podium, Brett, and adjust the microphone, and Holly will ask the questions, or?
So question number 1 is, discuss your occupation, training, and education. What characteristics, qualifications, and experiences do you have that support your candidacy and potential contribution as an alderperson?
All right, so my educational background is I have a Bachelor of Science from the University of Wisconsin in microbiology. I work for a large biotech company, Promega in Madison. I've worked there as as a senior scientist for 22 years now. My expertise is in protein purification, if anybody wants to know any more about that. But also I deal a lot with documentation and quality system management in the organization, and that's both at local, state, and federal levels. What other parts of the question, Holly, was there?
So it says, discuss your occupation, training, and education. What characteristics, qualifications, and experiences do you have to support your candidacy and potential for contribution as an alderperson?
Okay, got it. I also served on Stoughton area school board's Board of Education for 6.5 years. On that, I served as a treasurer for 2 years, a facility chair for 2 years, and a half a year on the Employee Relations Board as a chair for that, among many, many other committees. So I'm well versed in committee work beyond what you normally do just sitting here around this table. With that gave me a lot of experience with really being involved with the community and getting to understand a lot of the little nooks and crannies of the community that sometimes, you know, we might not notice or we might forget about, or things like that, and bring those issues and that up to light. It's always kind of surprising what you learn, what you find out, or things that you missed, because they're brought up to your attention pretty rapidly. I also do a lot of volunteerism within the community, with the like Sand Hill Elementary, working currently on setting up a STEM lab. I don't know if you saw the grant from Reliant Energy that the school had just gotten. So we're utilizing that money in order to set up an education or an additional education system based around STEM. Volunteer in the Working for Kids group, volunteer for the Boy Scout as a merit badge counselor. I've done astronomy and space exploration and blacksmithing, so two opposite ends of the spectrum there. I'm also the coordinator for Setnamai's Art and Craft Fair. I've been doing that for the last 4 years. So as far as committee work, organization, policies, and community face, I've done all of those sorts of things, and I think that would add a strength into being able to serve in this council.
Thank you. All right, and the next candidate is Timothy Riley.
Good evening.
Good evening. I will ask the same question of you. I'll repeat the question again. Please discuss your occupation, training, and education. What characteristics, qualifications, and experiences do you have that support your candidacy and potential for contribution as an alderperson?
Thank you. I'm an attorney. I've been in the private practice of law for over 32 years. Focus of my practice is real estate transactions, contracts, family law. The relation of the practice of law to this type of position, one, it requires thorough preparation. I assume this does as well watching you tonight. It seems to me that you all have a lot of work that you do before you ever arrive here. That's much the same with the practice of law. It requires analytical skills, and this position, I would think, too, calls upon your analytical skills regularly when you're reviewing ordinances or the redevelopment issues, etc. It requires separating the wheat from the chaff, getting to the heart of the matter. A command of the facts, and in the case of law, applicable law in each case. You can't do anything unless you really have a thorough command of the facts and what's out there and what you need to know. Always understanding both the strength and potential weaknesses of your position. When you're dealing with others and you're negotiating, obviously you want to accentuate what is strong in your position, what you believe in, but you also have to always understand what your weaknesses are in order to do that effectively. Being an attentive listener, compassion. Those are very important as well. The ability to clearly articulate your positions and arguments, negotiation skills, speaking skills, strong writing skills. All of those are part and parcel to that profession. And I believe they bring some talent and skill and experience to this position, or would. It may seem odd, but as I stated in my submission, I believe that my experience in theater lends itself to this position. I have been a performer for a good number of years, or I was. I don't do it much anymore. I've directed 6 different musicals for the Stoughton Village Players. It strengthened my skills as a communicator. It certainly hones one's creative skills, and it requires that you have a sense of an appreciation for aesthetics. And I think that relates very much to a lot of the redevelopment that we're looking at in the city, particularly with respect to the riverfront redevelopment, to have a feel for aesthetics and how that relates to the environment, et cetera, beyond just the economic issues that are involved in such a thing. Theater direction requires focus. It requires an immense amount of planning, again, and it requires dealing with a disparate number of issues, a good number of issues in any show you do. You're dealing with the auditions, the casting, dealing with lighting design, scenic design, costumes, staging, etc. It's a collaborative effort. You need to work well with other people. You always need to have a strong appreciation for other people's abilities and what they are doing for you, what they're doing as part of the show. Attention to detail, a vision and goal for the end result that you're looking to achieve. It's an evolutionary creative process. And frankly, I look too at a lot of what's going on in the city, and particularly, again, the most important TID issues, as an evolutionary creative process, as well as an economic one, of course. I have experience as a legislative aide quite some time ago. I do remember it, though, at the Capitol for a couple of 2 or 3 years. I worked at the Capitol as legislative aide. Obviously, gave me a lesson in politics and the legislative process, how the sausage is made, so to speak. Education. Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in Communication Arts, Television Production Direction, although obviously I gravitated off somewhere else. My minor in poli-sci. I hold a Juris Doctorate from the University of, I'm getting dry mouth, forgive me, from the University of Wisconsin Law School, Madison. And that is it.
All right. We will have you stay up at the podium
Dear.
because you will be going first for question 2.
Good. May I grab my water, though?
Yes.
If I might, I'll add one thing quickly, and that is that as far as community involvement, I have served on the board of Stoughton Youth Hockey Association in the past, the Stoughton Center for the Performing Arts in the past. I was a head hockey coach for Stoughton Youth Hockey for a good number of years. And again, as I noted, I've directed a number of musicals for the Stoughton Village Players. That finishes question 1.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Question number 2. In your opinion, what are the most important current issues for the city of Stoughton? Please discuss one of these issues in detail and describe how you would lead a committee to a solution.
Thanks. I noted in my submission that there's been a broad-based assault on local control, local government, city government in particular, by the state legislature and this governor. That's taken, and everything from the ability to raise funds to fund the city, from the ability to control zoning and development in your own local cities, in your cities and towns, protection of the environment, your relationship with the workers that work for the city. All of that has been under assault, in my opinion, by the state government. And it creates challenges. And it creates challenges with respect to finding ways to raise revenue, finding ways to grow, finding ways to keep a city vital. And I think it's important that our city do grow in a fiscally responsible manner, in a manner that attracts young families, that attracts viable commercial development. And all of that, of course, is also terribly important to our schools, which I have a special place in my heart for teachers and for education. So I realize that's not the province of this council, but it still is obviously important to our schools and what happens to our schools. I had the opportunity to drive through Nordic Ridge, and it's lovely. I mean, it's just an impressive development out there, the Parade of Homes, and it's a really positive development, obviously. The Riverfront redevelopment project, I refer to it, I think, in my submission as Riverwalk because for some reason that seems more prosaic and poetic, but I do mean the Riverfront redevelopment project. That's just an incredibly exciting opportunity. It has untold potential. I took the opportunity to go down and look at some of what's going on there. Primarily right now it's rubble, but I did get a look at the blacksmith building, and that looks, it's a really nifty structure. It would be, I think would obviously be something that would have great potential to be part of that redevelopment project. Obviously, it depends on whether or not it's economically feasible to do that. But I think it's an interesting prospect to have that building perhaps as an anchor for the project. I have to confess, I'm not certain if it would be facing, the main entrance facing the river or it's 7th Street, so that I couldn't tell. But with respect to trying to lead a committee to a resolution or seeking a resolution, it's much the same approach and skill set I think I would employ in my practice of law. Again, preparation, a command of the facts, knowing the right questions, asking the right questions, being a good listener. Compromise where appropriate. If you have a position and you feel strongly about that, if you need to see the other person's side of that, you need to be willing to compromise where it's appropriate and where you need to compromise in order to reach a resolution. But advocate for your position clearly and concisely. Know the strong points of your opposition and the weaknesses of their case, as well as the strong points of your case and your case's weaknesses. Always respect your opposing views and positions.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and we have the same question, number 2. In your opinion, what are the most important current issues for the city of Stoughton? Please discuss one of these issues in detail and describe how you would lead a committee to a solution.
So first, I'm assuming that the council has read all of these interesting bits in here. Okay, so what I was trying to do with this was to paint a story. And don't take this as just this is glib marketing and this is going to shiny everything up and make everything better. But I do think that Stoughton does suffer from an identity crisis in that we've got a lot of feet going in a lot of different directions, but we don't have any unified direction to get all of the volunteerism that's really prevalent in this community to get behind and really identify with. I think Stoughton does have, it's a victim of a lot of its past identities. I go to trade shows, I go to auctions, I go to flea markets, all these sorts of things, and a lot of times you start to recognize the same people in there, whether they're either from Stoughton, formerly from Stoughton, or they live in areas that are just around here. And most of the time, one of the things that they say about Stoughton are, well, have you learned how to spell your name on the water tower yet? Okay, so, that was funny about 5 years ago, but it's not so funny anymore, but we're still stuck with the moniker. So how do we go about shining up our image so that people have something that they can identify Stoughton with that's a bit more positive and that we've dropped an H? So in order to get on to doing something like that, I would say mimic something like the school district had done in 2011 when they had done a grand strategic planning and basically realigned and reformatted the entire direction that the school system was going in based on the feedback of the constituents within the city and experts that were from around the city, higher education, all those sorts of things. So mimic something like that, get all of your community members in here from all different walks of life and professions and sit and talk about it. What do we want to be? What does Stoughton want to be when we grow up, right? You also had similar things like with your design charrette where you got great public input and you're moving forward based on what you're getting from the public input. So again, this is not just sort of a glib branding and remarketing of the city, but I think once you get a clear mission statement in there and a clear goal in mind, then you can get all the boots of the volunteers behind this idea and you can move ahead much faster and you can go and knock off the list of other things. Roads and traffic flow, low-income housing, middle-income housing, opioid crisis, I'm stuck on science, sorry. Poverty percentage, declining enrollment in schools, stagnating population, the budget, and then stop having all these different silos of people all moving in different directions and not really advancing the entire city forward. That's all I've got for that.
All right, thank you. We will have you start the answers for question 3 first.
All right, very good.
So question 3, if there was an issue on the table that you agreed with but your constituents disagreed with, how would you vote and why?
I would vote with whatever my constituency describes for me to vote for. It's not, in my opinion, to make the decision in there. It's based upon whom I represent. So I would have to get their opinion first to understand what they feel about a certain issue, and then I would have to vote accordingly based on what information they give me.
Thank you. And I'll repeat question 3 again. If there was an issue on the table that you agreed with but your constituents disagreed with, how would you vote and why?
Thank you. You know, I believe that adherence to the wishes of one's constituency is important. It's a very important factor in deliberating, particularly as a representative, but I really do not believe it's the only factor. And I think that one, depending upon the issue, needs to rely upon one's best judgment, knowledge, and discretion. And if that advises that you vote in a different fashion than what you've heard from your constituents, then you do that. I noted in my submission that there are some issues that are more parochial, that I don't want a sidewalk in this area or whatever in a district. And that, you know, frankly, I would vote with my constituent because that's a very specific parochial issue. If we're talking about things such as major development, things of that nature, if I had the sense that a majority of my constituency opposed it, but I really believed it was in the best interest of this city, I would support it. I offered a quote in my written submission. If you didn't read it, maybe I'll read it for you because I love it. It's taken, actually, it's Edmund Burke. It's a British statesman, and it reads as follows. Your representative owes you not his industry only, but his judgment, and he betrays instead of serving you if he sacrifices it to your opinion. It's basically used in 1776, which is where I first came upon it, but anyway, the music. But I think that's a great summation of, I think, what a representative's duty is to their constituents. So that's my answer to that question.
Okay, thank you. Question number 4. Council meetings are the second and fourth Tuesday of the month, and there are 2 standing committees which you will be assigned to in addition to other meetings, correspondence, and information that will require your attention. Do you anticipate a problem in attending evening meetings or fulfilling other time commitments of an alderperson?
You know, my written response to this was intended to be somewhat glib, but it fell flat, I think. And maybe you didn't read it, which is just as well. But the short answer would be yes. You know, honestly, I would not have bothered to apply for the position if I did not feel that I could properly discharge the obligations of the position. So I don't anticipate any issues doing that if I were to be appointed.
Okay,
Thank you.
Question 4 again. Council meetings are the second and the fourth Tuesdays of the month, and there are 2 standing committees you will be assigned to in addition to other meetings, correspondence, and information that will require your attention. Do you anticipate a problem in attending evening meetings or fulfilling other time commitments of an alderperson?
I wouldn't have any issue with meeting those requirements. In the 6.5 years that I was with the school board, I missed 2 meetings in the entire time. That's committee as well as standing board meetings, and one of them I called in even though I was deathly ill. But anyway, I have no issues with that. My family has been very accommodating for the last 6.5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so what we do now is we basically pass out a paper ballot, and the requirement is that you sign your name for the record, and then select your candidate on there. You can return them to the clerk. Holly will tally them up, and we'll see what happens. And while we're doing that, I just want to personally thank both of the applicants for being willing to give the time commitment that's needed to serve in their community. I know they've both done service in the community in other ways in the past, and we really appreciate the fact that you both stepped up and offered your services to the city of Stoughton, so thank you both.
We take them both?
What's that?
Here's one pass here. Tough one.
The only one, I'm sorry.
Always have to be the last one, don't you, Tess?
She fell asleep.
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing I ask is it's not a tie.
What?
Don't let it be a tie.
It's a very tough decision.
It
They're
is.
great candidates. It's really hard.
I guess I'll go to the bathroom. Thank you.
Like, just so you can make a tough decision.
That's right.
I know, it is. It's a tough one. This is probably the toughest one we've had.
It's out, right?
Just two are missing.
I forgot myself.
Do it the other way around, I'll just count, you don't count, just minus the two.
What an incomplete I am.
Think it would have been
Oh, we are. What an look.
Is it?
Hope we all can
All right. There were 4 votes for Brett Schumacher, and, I'm sorry, there were 3 votes for Brett Schumacher and 7 votes for Timothy Riley.
Congratulations, Mr. Riley. Thank you, Mr. Schumacher. And we will immediately do the swearing in, right? And so, Tim, you can meet Holly at the podium here.
At the podium, Tim?
At the
Yes.
podium, oh.
Congratulations.
All right. You could please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name,
I, Timothy S. Riley,
having been appointed to
having been appointed to
the office of
the office of
District 1 Alder,
District 1 Alder,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially
and will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of the said office
of the said office
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God. Thank you. It's kind of intentionally illegible.
Okay, you can pull up a chair right away when you're ready. You get to jump right in.
Why, what's wrong with that one?
I said it's great,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, so
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Right here is open.
Can we keep them both?
I do scream sometimes.
That's fine.
Yeah, don't listen to her.
We are entertained by Taz all the time.
All right, just let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready, I'm good.
Are you ready?
Yeah, we're
Alderperson
ready. Come
Riley,
on
are you
now.
ready?
I am ready, except I'll confess I wasn't able to print out the packet, so I don't know.
That's
if the
okay.
materials
Somebody
are-
over there will share.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, so we're on
Your strengths are.
Item number 9, and there's a couple typos here, but we can get through them. Item number 9 is R112 of 2018, and the typos are actually in the packet document. It says it's Resolution 113, but it is 112, and it is my appointment for a citizen member to the library board. And the way it works is I nominate somebody, and then the city council votes to authorize or confirm that nomination. And the library board has their own process that they go through. They select somebody from their pool of candidates that wants to serve. This particular person here is serving on the library board as a non-city member, which is a little bit more challenging to find sometimes. But the library board has put forward a candidate, so I would be looking for a motion to confirm this appointment of Mr. Ken Axe.
I move that we appoint Ken Axe to the library board.
Second?
Okay, so there was a motion by Dransick, and the second was by Alderperson Johnson. Any discussion on that one?
And I'm sorry, maybe this is what you already pointed out, but that it says in the resolution, it says seniors in need? Is
Yeah,
that
it's
what
the
you were
library
saying?
board.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
we'll correct that.
Yep.
We had a couple typos, and we'll get them all corrected. Yeah, it was a rough week. Any other questions or clarifications on that one? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. Thank you very much. And that takes us to R113 of 2018, and this one comes from the Finance Committee. Alderperson Dransick.
Yeah, the Finance Committee met this evening and recommended that the council approve R113, 2018, authorizing and directing the proper city officials to approve an expense not to exceed $58,500 from the Accounting Department Payroll Fund and possibly contingency fund for interim finance services from Baker Tilly, and I so moved.
I'll second.
And what I would like to let the council know that we have presently $62,000 in our contingency fund, and as AJ will tell us, we have from payroll and I think that she sent you guys.
Yeah, I've got the numbers here.
She's got the numbers there, but whatever is not covered by the payroll, it's about $29,743, which would have to come from contingency, and right now we have that money in contingency. So I'll turn it over to AJ so that she can explain the rest of it.
So in the interim, until we make a final decision as to what we're doing with the finance director position, the Personnel Committee unanimously voted on June 4th to move forward with Baker Tilly and the engagement letter that they had supplied for us. The individual that's working with us would be Paul Frantz, who comes from Baker Tilly's government division. And going into the budgeting process, we really felt that we had to have somebody with that level of expertise. So the billable amount for Paul coming to the city is $200 per hour, and then there's travel expenses as well, which I outlined in the memo that I sent out to you with the interim costs for the director. So I asked for a not to exceed amount of $58,500, which would take us through the end of August. And we're hoping by that point in time we have our decision made as to what we're going to do with the position, who's going to be hired, and what that structure will look like. So we've reviewed the numbers. I also talked with Jamin from the Utilities Division, who used to work at Baker Tilly as an auditor. We went through the engagement letter, and the $200 per hour is actually a little bit lower than what is norm, and that's because of the relationship and the utilization of the services that we have with Baker Tilly. So typically it would be about $250 per hour. We have it at $200, and again, services through the end of August would not exceed $58,500. I also put on there the costs that we would have had Director Laborde stayed with us for that 13 weeks. and that was a grand total of $28,756. So taking the cost between the two, that's where Denise shared that number with you. There's an approximate difference of $29,743, which we're asking would come from contingency. The remaining portion would come out of the payroll. Any questions on that?
Alderperson Hirsch?
How much total is left in contingency right now? Because I see that there's other requests for contingency funds.
Denise has that number.
I will just go through as we subtract, you know, what we're spending. So basically, we started at 62. If in fact he stays for the full 13 weeks as projected, and we have to dip into contingency, and we would subtract the 29,743, we would be left with 32,256 in contingency. And there is also something that the City Council the Finance Committee voted on, but is not on the agenda, which is the boiler.
Right.
It'll be 2 weeks.
It'll be 2 weeks.
Yep.
You know, we voted to spend 10,000 on a boiler issue for the fire department, which you will see in 2 weeks, which then ends up leaving 22,256 in contingency. So I am keeping track of that. That's why I keep telling you the numbers.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess there was another thing, I think, in finance that you were voting on with the,
Yeah, that's later on the agenda, and we can
yeah, so
walk
I'm
you
just
through
saying.
that when we get to that.
Well, I know, but I do, to make a decision here, I gotta know if that, I think is, what is it, the,
That was for the relocation study.
right, the relocation study, is there enough to do all that? That's the.
I will be addressing that with council at that time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Basically,
There's enough money in there if the council wants to do it, but I want to share a number of other issues with the council at that point too.
so there's a recommendation that'll be coming for that item tonight, was to table it, which we'll talk about when we get to that point. And then Alderperson Duransic and myself have a meeting with Paul tomorrow to discuss our finances. And when we come back in 2 weeks, we should be able to give you a more up-to-date number, and what our options would be is if that contingency level gets to a point where we need to replenish it. And
Okay, thank you.
I think, Regina, where we need to be really clear is that we do not have somebody on staff to really direct that department right now.
No, I'm not.
So,
I'm
no,
not
just so
questioning.
you, I just want to make sure you understood that. That's why we've had to bring Paul in, and he has been on staff for almost a week and a half with us, just trying to bridge that gap. And with us going into the budget process, we've asked Jamin to help us as well, but this is an immediate need that we really need that direction, and we need the separation of duties with somebody looking at what's happening internally as well. So just so you understand that piece.
No, I was never questioning that I would go against what you're suggesting. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to get the full picture, you know, as we move forward tonight, that we're not overspending
Got it.
before we get to another agenda item.
Sure.
don't worry, Denise won't let that happen.
Yep,
She's got those purse strings.
yes. Very tight purse strings.
Any other questions or comments on that one? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Item number 11 is ordinance 16 of 2018. And this one comes from our clerk. So Holly, this is on for first reading. Do you want to walk us through? It's an ordinance change.
Sure. So this is an ordinance change that would correct the ward designation that was specified in ordinance number 6 of 2016. This was the annexation from the town of Dunkirk for the Public Works facility. If you look at the map related to the resolution. There is one small piece of land labeled Lot 2 of CSM 433. That little piece of land actually has a different Dane County Supervisory District. And although there are no voters there currently or for the foreseeable future, we need to make this correction in in our ordinances in order to comply with state law. It wasn't caught until it got all the way to the Elections Commission, so it had already been recorded with Dane County. Dane County didn't even catch it. So I'm asking that we just correct that ward designation. There is a strict time limit on this. It does need to be re-recorded by the Dane County Register of Deeds by June 30th in order to make it happen before the August election. So, yes.
Alderperson O'Connor?
I'd make a motion to waive the rules and proceed.
Okay.
Second.
There's a motion to waive the rules by O'Connor and a second by Bartlett. And basically what that means when we waive the rules is on an ordinance, we typically have a two-step process, 2 meetings. And if we want to avoid that second step and vote on it the same night, we make a motion to waive the rules, which takes a 2/3 vote in order for that to pass to consider the next vote.
Point of order.
Sure.
I didn't hear a motion introducing the ordinance. We need a motion to introduce the ordinance first before we can waive it.
But we didn't
It was never introduced.
We had a reading of it, but we didn't have
Right.
a motion for the ordinance.
Well, we typically don't because
No, I guess.
it's kind of the chicken and the egg.
It's a first reading.
Because it was the first reading, nobody made the motion because
I still
we wouldn't have
don't.
known to waive the rules.
I would,
Yeah.
the attorney, I think we need to have a motion to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you could make one motion to introduce the ordinance, waive the rules, and adopt it,
Okay.
and then that takes care of it.
All right. So the person that made the motion was O'Connor. Is that acceptable?
Go ahead.
Okay. and-
Whatever he said.
All right. Whatever the attorney says goes around here. Did you catch all that?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a motion to introduce the ordinance, waive the rules, and to vote on it. Any discussion on that?
So we're voting on the waiving of the rules? Is
We're
that-
voting on everything now, right?
But we need 2/3 majority.
I don't know that you can do that, though, because the waiving the rules requires one vote, and then the ordinance itself would require a second vote.
Well, not if it's unanimous, it won't matter.
Well, we can do anything we want, I guess.
If we don't get a 2/3, we can start over. Any questions or comments on that? Otherwise, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That sounds unanimous, so I think we're good. So that motion carries, so you have that and you can file that at your earliest convenience. Thank you. All right, that takes us to R-114, 2018. And that one is coming from the Planning Commission. Alderperson Bartlett.
From the Planning Commission, bringing lifting of council, Resolution 114 of 2018, lifting the council imposed demolition moratorium for the East Park Historic District, East Side Historic District, Northwest Side Historic District, and Southwest Side Historic District. We got a motion to approve.
Second.
I think I heard a second by O'Connor.
Yep.
Go ahead, Alderperson Bartlett. Anything?
And this is, we were just looking at lifting the imposed demolition moratorium for areas outside the downtown overlay district. So it'll get rid of those 1s and 2s that are coming to us, people trying to fix garages and some different issues. So Rodney, if you'd like to expand on this.
Yeah, I certainly can. All the ordinance revision discussions that have been occurring haven't been related to any zoning districts outside of the downtown historic district. So some of these issues have created challenges for people that wanted to demolish a garage or a detached structure in some of these outlying districts. Therefore, staff made a recommendation that we proceed with lifting the moratorium on those outer districts. This does not, however, remove the moratorium that was also placed in the blacksmith shop. So the downtown district and the and the blacksmith shop are still covered under that moratorium,
So,
the Matt Foundry building.
and just to add to that, so really if we lift this moratorium, these districts are still covered by Chapter 38, which is the historic, the local landmarks ordinance, if you will. So if somebody wanted to do some work on one of the homes or buildings that were in one of these areas, they would still have to do that under that ordinance. And as the resolution says, we continue to have discussions about Chapter 78. We had a special meeting the other night, and I think we made significant progress. We've got it down to about a handful of items that we're working on, and we're in the process of trying to schedule another special meeting to address those. And we're working around scheduling conflicts, but hopefully we'll get there. Alderperson Johnson, did you have something?
Yeah, I have a question. Is the landmarks aware of all these changes and everything? Okay. Thank
Yes, we are. Peggy's been coming to the meetings and providing very valuable input as we deliberate on these items.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions or concerns? So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of lifting the moratorium, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you. That takes us to ordinance 17 of 2018, and this one here, I believe also is coming from the clerk. Is that true, or?
Our chair of
Board of
Board of
Review.
Review is not here. Greg, I don't know if you want to give this the first reading, and then I can explain a little bit more what this ordinance does.
Sure, I can do that for a first reading. Ordinance 17, 2018, ordinance creating Chapter 2, Division 12, Section 2-324 through 2-325 of the Code of Ordinances relating to the assessor and confidentiality of income and expense information, and it's first reading.
Sure. So this ordinance is just bringing our ordinances up to code, or the same as this Wisconsin state law. There was a law passed last year that if the assessor were to assess any properties using the income method, which is not typically used, any of that income would be confidential. So it's just making sure that our ordinances align with the Wisconsin state law.
Did you have some
How
other
is this
person?
time sensitive?
This one is not time sensitive.
Okay, thank you.
And this was one of them, as Holly mentioned, occurred last year, and during the transition of clerks, I think it fell between the cracks. And actually, we had two people that caught it. One was Holly, and the other one was Sid Boersma when he was reviewing the video for the Board of Review training. So it was a good catch, and we're just bringing it to everyone's attention now. Didn't come into play at all during this last meeting, but if it did in the future, we need to have a policy in place in order to comply. So that's what this one's all about, and it'll come back in 2 weeks. Anybody have any questions? Alderperson Bartlett?
I would just ask to fix that wording issue on, I think, sentence 5. It says MO person. I don't know what the wording's supposed to be. MO person?
No.
And more than one person, or?
Probably no.
Yeah, so, no, yeah. We can just fix that for the second reading.
Who would have thought that I typed that one?
That was Attorney Dragney, so
He's not here to defend himself.
Yeah.
Explains a lot.
Okay, so we'll see that one in 2 weeks. That takes us to item number 14, which is R-115 in 2018. And that one comes from Public Safety, so Alderperson Jensen.
I thank you, Your Honor. Resolution 115, 2018, a resolution authorizing directing the proper city officials to approve the liquor license renewal for a period of July 1, 2018 through June 30, 2019, and I would so move.
Second?
Is standards do this every year? Liquor licenses are up for renewal, and I believe Reverend Jim's is in there.
Yes, it
No.
is.
But in the end, it's not.
It isn't?
Is he not in there?
Yeah, there's wording at the end that takes it out for
Yeah.
the Brick House and Reverend Jim's.
Booyah.
Yeah.
Could be.
Go ahead. So Holly will walk us through the explanation here.
No,
So
it was taken up by your action.
Public-
Appreciate it.
Public Safety recommended that we not approve the licenses for Reverend Jim's and the Brick House, because these establishments have, the Reverend Jim's has been closed since January, and the Brick House has been closed, I believe, since their fire from August of last year. Our ordinance does say that if any licensed establishment is not open for 60 consecutive days, that is grounds for either revocation or non-renewal of the license. You wouldn't be actually denying the license tonight. What you would be doing is directing me to send a letter to those businesses and saying that you intend to deny them. We would invite them to the next meeting for a hearing where they could come and address the council. The mayor and I did go visit Reverend Jim's on yesterday. And they are working on Reverend Jim's. They are making improvements, and they are almost done redoing the floor, and they are working on doing the ceiling, and they plan to be open by Saturday. So I don't know if you want to take that into consideration.
Alderperson Jensen.
Reverend Jim's is the last one on here under the Class B liquor license, be fermented malt beverage. So it is in there, so if we approve this, we are approving his license.
There's a last port, those are all the people that applied for licenses.
It's the be it resolved.
Oh, okay, my mistake. I forgot about that.
Go all the way to the end.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So he's still going to have to do this because of the recommendation coming out of committee, right? That's why we're doing that?
Well, this is the recommendation coming out
You
of
don't have
committee.
to
We
take
haven't
the
approved it here yet.
recommendation. You can,
We can amend the recommendation here.
Then we'll make, then I'd make the motion to amend the recommendation to include Reverend Jim's for approval.
For approval. Second.
Okay. So there is a amendment by Jensen and a second by Mayeski to basically go ahead and renew that for Reverend Jim's. And are you okay with that, Chief?
Oh, yeah, I'm fine with that. Just for clarification on the Brick House license, that would come for a hearing before the Public Safety Committee, just so that's
So that
clear.
doesn't come here.
Doesn't come direct to council. I believe it comes to the committee first for hearing.
Right. And the key thing with this one is Public Safety met, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and at that time, we didn't really have an updated status on either one. And as Holly mentioned, since then, we have an update from Reverend Jim's. He was here tonight to present his case. We're confident that he's going to reopen. We want him, allow him to do that. So that's kind of the plan. Alderperson O'Connor?
Thank you, Mayor. If Reverend Jim's doesn't reopen, though, does that start off a new licensing period that they'd have to be not in operation for?
Well, I think because of the way the ordinance reads, it says 60 consecutive days, so I don't think it makes a difference whether you renew it or not. And if he doesn't open, you can start that action, I think, any time as long as he's still in violation of that 60 days. That violation will be due, what is it, 16th on your letter, Holly?
I believe the 17th, which
17th.
is a Sunday, but he says he's going to open on the 16th.
I mean, technically speaking, all he has to do is open for one day, and then the clock would start over again, so.
And that's basically what he wants to do because he's still doing some remodeling. So he wants to continue that process and not have his license revoked. Because if he did, he would have to apply for a reserve license, I believe, at that point.
If someone else, so he has a regular license, we are all out of regular licenses. If he were to lose his license and then someone came to apply for his license, then he would have to apply for that reserve license, which is $10,000.
Just maybe one comment. The reason why I think of that provision is in the ordinances is because of the regular licenses, and quite honestly, all liquor licenses are coveted. So having that, continual use provision in there ensures that if somebody gets a license, they're actually using it and conducting the business in the way that the fashion it's supposed to be done in. So as far as Reverend Jim goes, I don't have any objection if you approve them. It looks like he's making progress and he's almost ready to finalize his construction project. In regards to the brick house, I would recommend that we continue on, and if they don't have it reopened by the time their deadline runs out, I would, probably recommend it go to committee for a hearing.
Okay. Alderperson Hirsch?
I know the public safety probably addressed this, but was there any of these applicants that are applying that had a number of, what do you say?
Points?
Non-compliance to the liquor, the laws at all that we should be concerned about?
Well, going back to the compliance checks that we just completed, unfortunately, we're unable to assess any point violations against the liquor licensee because of the change in state law. Because it was a compliance check, you can't issue the licensee even, and we felt there were a couple actual licensees that were, part of the compliance check that failed. But we decided that since, we couldn't hold the others responsible, it doesn't make sense just to hold those individuals responsible as well. So what we decided to do is treat everybody the same way. We are going, and we have been following up with enforcement activities where the officers actually doing their own compliance checks, which of course would not have the provision in the state law that doesn't allow us to cite both the operator and the licensee. So far, we haven't found any violations since that time. But we do plan on having at least one or two more yet this year where we're going to actually do a compliance check again. Other than that, nobody had any point violations during the period of the last licensing period. We did have one licensee that had a operating while under the influence charge. That was brought to the attention of the committee. They elected this to approve anyways as a single violation, and it doesn't count as a points violation against the licensee.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions? So we have the amendment basically is to allow Reverend Gyms to basically have their license renewed. So we would be voting on the amendment first, I believe.
One quick question
Sure.
to clarify then. So with this amendment, if we pass the amendment and then pass this, then it's my understanding that the Beer Council will be getting a letter showing intent to deny.
That's
correct.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions on the amendment? Otherwise, all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. The amendment passes. So we go back to the original motion as amended, which will include that. Any questions or comments on the motion as amended? Hearing none, all in favor of that?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. That one carries. Thank you. That takes us to R116, 2018, and that also comes from Public Safety.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Resolution 116, 2018, a resolution authorizing and directing the proper city officials to approve the outdoor consumption permits for a period of July 1st, 2018 through June 30, 2019, and I would so move.
Second.
Motion by Jensen, second by O'Connor. Any discussion on that one? Alderperson Jensen, anything?
Nope, just straightforward, every year, doing the same thing.
Chief, anything from your end?
Recommend approval.
Anybody else? Hearing none, all in favor of that one, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Thanks again. Item R117 also comes from Public Safety.
Thank you, Your Honor. R117, 2018, authorizing and directing the proper city officials to issue an operator's license for Michael Rayfield, and I would so move.
So there's a
Second.
motion and a second by O'Connor. Okay. Alderperson Jensen.
Yes, this is, we denied this in committee, 4-0. And so it was presented as an approval, so please vote against to deny, or vote for if you wish to go ahead and approve it. He was not here tonight, so he can't defend himself, so.
And I believe this one here was one where he didn't appear, right?
Right, he did not appear at Public Safety either.
Okay, so if somebody fills out an application and they're requested to be there and they don't, it's automatic recommendation for denial. Is that accurate?
Well, that's what the council has done in the past. If they've failed to appear, then they've simply went along with a recommendation to deny.
Okay. All right, so the motion is yes if you want to approve it, no if you want to follow the recommendation from public safety. So all in
What was
favor?
that again? I'm sorry?
Yes if you want to approve it, no if you want to follow the public safety recommendation for denial. So having said that, all in favor say aye. All opposed?
No.
Okay, so that motion does fail. Takes us to ordinance 18 of 2018, and wouldn't you know it, Alderperson Jensen, Public Safety.
Thank you. Ordinance 18, 2018, an ordinance amending Chapter 70-176 of the City Stoughton Municipal Code, creating subsection parent 74 relating to parking restrictions on the east side of 7th Street from East Main Street south 450 feet, and I would so move. Oh, wait a minute, this is the first reading, sorry.
Continued on to the next page. So I had a motion by Jensen. O'Connor left the room, so somebody else needs to second it.
It's actually a first reading, no.
Oh, it's first reading, I'm sorry. Any questions on this one? Otherwise, this one will be back in 2 weeks. Anything, Chief?
Nope, nothing.
Okay, so we'll go on to the next one then. Ordinance 19 of 2018 is also a first reading. And who says public safety never does anything?
Yeah, you bet.
All right.
Yes. Ordinance 19, 2018, amending Chapter 1, Section 3, Parent G, Parent 2 of the City Stoughton Municipal Code, creating subsection Parent 5, Chief of Police, to those able to delegate citation issuance. And this is for a first reading, but I would suspend the rules to approve this tonight.
Okay, so there's a motion to suspend the rules and to approve the motion.
Second.
And a second by Johnson. And
The chief can
Alderperson.
comment on the suspension.
Pardon me?
The chief can comment on the need for the suspension.
Okay, go ahead.
Basically, what this allows us to do is to have our new community service officer be provisioned to or able to issue citations, specifically parking citations in the future. She's already on board, she's already working, and so waiting 2 weeks for this to come back for a second reading would be unnecessary. We'd like to get it moving forward so that she can start taking those enforcement actions for us now.
And they move to suspend
Okay.
the rules.
Any questions on this one? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That one carries as well. Thank you, Public Safety. You guys are busy.
You bet. I get to
All
wear the
right.
wig.
We're at,
That's before all you guys.
what's that? We're at item R118 of 2018, and this one comes from Finance from tonight. Alderperson Jurancic.
Yes, Finance met this evening and tabled this resolution to its next meeting. And I would like to review some of the financials that I presented to the committee because I recommended that this actually be tabled until we could actually look into our financial situation more closely. So as I've already told you, starting the evening, we had $62,000 in contingency. After voting for an interim finance director, it brings it down to $32,256. After $10,000 for a boiler, which we need, that's an emergency, it brings it down to $22,256. If we would pass this motion, contingency would be brought down to $9,692. Now, I also raised the issue that if we accept the building, in the agreement, we would be paying $5,000 for bank closing fees for McFarland. Then we would also be responsible for utilities, which are not budgeted in our budget. And so that would pretty much wipe out our contingency fund. But we also have unknown costs to us, such as city closing costs, city legal fees, title work, hazardous material testing renovation costs. And over the last several weeks, I have also been delving into, first of all, the audit. So I have reviewed the 2017 audit. I have also been reviewing the budget, not just for this year, but last year and other years. And I also went back and I looked at some of the tables that we were given that told us about our total debt principal and interest payments. So in February, when we were talking about borrowing, Tammy gave us a table, and for next year, we would have a total debt principal and interest payment of $2.76 million, which would have to be transferred out of the operating budget. And then in March, we borrowed the $8.5 million for Public Works. And for next year, our debt payment would be about $530,000. This year, let me give you, a reference point. We had a transfer in for debt service, $2.65 million. So we're looking at $640,000 that we would have to transfer in for debt payment. Now, I'm hoping this is not the case because, of course, I'm the one who's going through all these numbers. Tomorrow, I am meeting with Paul to talk about all of these financial issues that I have questions about. And so, since I did not feel comfortable with our total financial picture at this point, I recommended that we table this until we have a better feel for what our financial obligations are going to be in 2019. And so the recommendation from the committee was to table. I did not want to put forward the motion to table it because once you put forward that motion, you can't discuss it. So I wanted to make sure that I presented to you the information that I presented to the Finance Committee. And so now, can I ask them if anybody has questions?
Sure, yep, go for it. Does anybody have any questions? Alderperson Hirsch.
I'm just, by tabling this, does this put us in jeopardy of losing this opportunity of acquiring McFarland St. Pete?
We will discuss that in the next item in closed session. We have the attorney here, and there were a number of concerns with what was presented to us. So if nobody else has any questions, I would ask for you folks to, I will move to table this resolution.
Second.
There's a motion by Dransik and a second by Jensen. And as Alderperson Dransik mentioned, once you make a motion and it's seconded to table, there's no discussion. So having said that, all in favor of the table, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. So that takes us to item, last but not least, item number 20. And that comes from the Finance Committee as well. Alderperson Dransik.
Well, we went into closed session, and I would recommend that we go into closed session and have the attorney go through the items that he did with us. We did not make any other decisions other than to give him some direction, but we wanted to make sure that council could hear his concerns, and if you had any other direction to give him, that you would have that opportunity. So I would move that we go into closed session as per state statute 19.85 parens 1 parens E for the purpose of deliberating and negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specific public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons deem a closed session necessary. And so move.
Second. There was a motion by Dransik. I heard a second by Hirsch. Any discussion on that? Otherwise, I believe we have to do that on a roll call, don't we?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Hirsch,
Aye.
Riley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Reeves,
Aye.
Mieski,
Aye.
Caravello,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Weisinger,
Aye.
O'Connor,
Aye.
Durancic,
Aye.
Bartlett.
Okay. Do you want to take a couple minutes?
Yes.
Okay, let's do that. and
Okay,
then we'll-
so this is,
Thank you for pointing me where we're at.
It's-
That last one.
Yeah. Well, it was something that was different, because all of a sudden he's like, well, I want to suspend the rules. I'm like,
And
oh,
there's
okay,
things.
fine.
are we off?
No, short break. We're not
Short
on.
break.
The speakers are still on. I can turn them off. Are they off, Greg?